Hey guys, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Morning Tea. Today's tea is green tea, as it always is, with lots of lemon. Okay, so today's topic is going to be a little controversial, but what is happening in the news on CNN.com, this is an international story involving Paraguay, which is a country in South America, or as some people say, Paraguay. Right now, there is a mother being prosecuted for child endangerment because her 10-year-old daughter is 5 months pregnant with her husband's child. And that is the 10-year-old, that's her stepfather. I guess in Paraguay, it's illegal to have an abortion. So she can't have an abortion. The 10-year-old girl can't have an abortion. She's been taken away from her mother. Amnesty International is fighting for human rights for her to be able to get an abortion because there's a national law in Paraguay that says that an abortion can be legal if it's going to hurt the parent, if it's going to hurt the mother. Another official from Amnesty International says the physical and psychological impact of forcing a young girl to continue with an unwanted pregnancy is tantamount to torture. Yet the ambassador for whatever, ambassador for health, whatever, has decided that this girl is fine and that she will have a normal pregnancy and that everything is going okay and that she should have the baby. What? She's 10 years old. She's 10 years old and she was raped by her stepfather, and some male government official feels like she should have the baby. What? I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm not going to ask you guys to comment because the last time I asked you guys to comment about this kind of subject, nobody commented. And that's fine. At 10 years old, all this has happened to her. She is 10 years old. There are 25-year-olds who don't understand what it is to get pregnant and have a baby. You know what I'm saying? There are grown women who have children every day who are completely unprepared for what it means to have a child, for what it means to have to give up who you are basically as a person. Not wholeheartedly, not 100%, but you do have to give up a lot of what you want in this world so that you can rear and raise this child. And there are so many people who don't understand that, and they're adults. And this 10-year-old, I don't care what country she's in. I don't care what the culture is in their country or whatever, but a 10-year-old, you're going to steal this child's childhood because someone raped her? And apparently, in Paraguay, I think they said every day, 2 girls between the age of 10 and 14 give birth. What? Who's to say that doesn't happen here, though? You know what I'm saying? Who's to say that doesn't happen here? Because I'm always shocked at the stuff that is allowed to happen in the US that supposedly doesn't happen here. Specifically talking about Black women, because I cannot speak about other women of color or white women. I don't know what the air in that community is about this topic, but I can only talk about what I feel the air is from my perspective about this topic. But there is a sort of air or code in our community that doesn't allow us to believe the victim of rape or abuse and stuff like that, any kind of abuse that happens. There is a cyclical cycle of abuse that happens in our community. You see the emotional and mental abuse a lot of times out in public with Black women yelling at their kids. There's this air of that in our community, right? So, and when you have popular cases such as R. Kelly, you have Keith Sweat, you have Billy D. Williams, Mike Tyson, Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, and there's no consequences for them. And we even fight about the validity on social media, about the validity of the victim's cries for help, and I don't understand what that is in our community. And I can't, I can't speak for what's happening in the white community or any other community because I don't know. We don't hear of these things that are happening to white women or Asian women or Hispanic women. I know they're happening in the Hispanic community for sure, but we don't hear about them. We hear about them in the Black community. You can call that a conspiracy if you want to, but I'm just saying the fact is that in our community, we hear about these things, yet we as women and as a community we still don't believe the victim. We still have skepticism. There's still little girls that are like Team Breezy. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should just ostracize Chris Brown. It happened, I don't know how long ago. And I do think that if it's something like that happens once and you figure it out and, you still are known as this person and you still have things taken away from you because of this behavior. But I do think there is some road for redemption. There is a road to redemption when it comes to it happening once in your life, especially if you were a victim of that kind of abuse or you saw that kind of abuse in your household. But when it becomes a thing that you continuously do to people, to women like Floyd Mayweather, or you do to someone who you are in a domestic partnership with, married, girlfriend, living with, whatever, like that's when it's a huge breach. Almost 1/3 of intimate homicides, like domestic abuse that turns into homicide, 1/3 of intimate homicides is Black women. So Black women are dying because they are being killed by their boyfriend, a lover, or husband. And it usually happens when they're trying to leave. And so a lot of people always are like, why don't you just leave when someone is being attacked or is abused? And a lot of times they can't leave. They either A, really physically have no other place to go, or B, when they actually try to leave, the person gets angry and ends up killing them. The idea is, how do you end up in these situations? I honestly don't know. I don't know how women end up in abusive relationships and stay. I think some people are just used to a certain amount of abuse. Maybe they got a certain amount of emotional and verbal abuse from their parents or from their mother or someone in their household. And so when they got into a relationship with someone, that kind of verbal, emotional abuse continued and they just were used to it. That is what they're used to. Sometimes it's easier to be with what you're used to than what you're not used to. Even if you don't want what you're used to, it's easier because you understand that. You understand the anger and the frustration, especially if you have like a parent who gets mad like that. Like, do you understand that behavior? And you don't understand somebody who's not like that. You think of them as being soft or as not being worthy or whatever it is that you've equated with that sort of behavior. That's how women get caught up in those things. Like, I don't know how Janae Rice got caught up in her situation because we all saw him like distinctly punch her in her face and then drag her out that elevator like she meant nothing. Then like be like, oh, she's drunk to the security guard. Like, there was a lot of things that he did that led everyone who watched that video to believe that he just did not give a F about it. Like, he was just like, I punched her, she deserved it. This is what that B gets, done. And I don't know how anyone can be with anyone who doesn't value value them, but I don't know. But that doesn't mean that I think less of that woman. That woman is very frustrating for me because I don't understand how to help her, but I'm not going to make her feel terrible for that choice, because you should never blame the victim. And you guys know that I will never blame the victim when it comes to situations like that, because I honestly don't know. I've never been a victim of that kind of abuse. So I don't know what that is like. I don't know what your background is or what is happening in your head at the time of these incidents happening. But I feel like us as a community, we judge her or him because men don't even come forward with that. And I see these women out in the streets hitting these men. You know what I'm saying? Like, and no one would stop it. Let me tell you why I wouldn't stop. If I saw a Black woman beating on her husband in public, like slapping him and running after him, let me tell you why, one, I wouldn't stop it. One, I would assume, which is probably incorrect and completely ignorant of me, I would assume that he cheated on her, so he deserves a beating. And secondly, not that he would even deserve a beating. Like, I don't know why I think that. But I would also not want to fight her. Like, if I were to, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I were to stop that, she would turn around and fight me because we're both women, right? So she could feel, okay, that's okay to fight me. And I don't know that I could fight her. If it were a man and I were trying to stop that, maybe he'd turn and thought he could fight me too, but he would think faster about hitting me as a stranger and abusing two women in public than a woman would. So that's why I wouldn't stop it. I mean, I would call the police. No, I wouldn't. I can't. See, the thing is, though, like, I don't even feel like the police are helpful. I wouldn't call the police, but I would stare until it went away. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. What would you do? You know what I'm saying? Or would you be like me and assume that he did something to deserve it? Men are stronger than women, but sometimes there are women who are stronger than their men, and they pick specific men same way that men pick specific women to abuse. They know what type they can get away with that with. Same thing with women who are abusers. They pick specific men or women, if you're in a same-sex marriage or relationship, that they can abuse. The people who are abusers usually know what their victims look like. They have the telltale signs. They know what they can get away with. And especially if they've been doing it since they were teens, there's a lot of teens that are coming forward and saying that they're in abusive relationships too. And that's the thing that's the craziest, like, because you, as a teenager, you don't have to have been abused by your family in order to end up in an abusive relationship, because we as a society teach women that being with a man and supporting her man and being a ride or die and all that is stupid nonsense is important. And that is the woman's role, to take care of the dangerous man who has a lot going on, but you can save him. Like that whole like saving or like being there for the guy. Sure, he beats me, but he loves me. He takes care of me. And like that sort of like Madonna savior, you know, mother of the race type attitude. There are women and young girls who fall susceptible to that idea. I'm not one of them, but there are a lot of women out there who do. And so if they end up in an abusive relationship with a guy, they don't want to get out of it because this is love to them. This is what they're supposed to do. Actually, there was a Lifetime movie about this when I was younger, but it wasn't with Black people. It was with DJ Tanner from Full House. Do you guys remember that movie? I don't know what it's called. My friend Ashley, who you guys have met, she says that her health class showed that movie. Like, here, watch this. Don't be a victim of teen domestic violence. Crazy. Anyways, so like it happens. If Lifetime put a movie out about it in the 90s, that means it was happening to young white women in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? It's a thing that occurs. But we as a community shelter that. We not support it, but we support it by not being against it. Same thing with R. Kelly. We all knew that R. Kelly liked his girls young. And there were even papers and things written about R. Kelly in the 90s when he was riding around high schools, picking up young girls, you know, and abusing them and then paying off families because, you know, when the family found out that this grown ass man was like trolling around the high schools, picking up young girls, like, you know, you get to a point, and men in general and people in general get to a point where they're so rich and so famous and people love them that almost whatever they do, it doesn't really affect them until we start to affect their pocket. Billy D. Williams was beating women. Mike Tyson was beating and raping women. Like, people were doing things, you know, this is who this man is. Keith Sweat too. No, we should have hit them in their bottom line. Like, if you are an abuser, if you exhibit this behavior, there should be consequences for that. Just because it didn't happen to me doesn't mean that it didn't happen to me. You know what I'm saying? It's still happening to us as a community. And we need to stop sheltering these abusers and sheltering this idea, especially when it comes to domestic violence or rape, incest, and all that stuff. We need to stop sheltering that. It's not healthy for us as women. It's not healthy for our young girls to grow up in an environment where they're not valued. Because that's all that says to me. You know, that we allow these men, you know, to do to get away with what they've done consequence-free or relatively consequence-free. It lowers the self-esteem of our young girls. We're teaching them that they aren't good enough. They're not, you know, they need to accept the brunt of whatever it is that's happening in their life, and they don't have any value. And we need to teach our young girls value, because Lord knows the environment and the media is not teaching them that. Especially, man, I just did a video about the music. In the music, Black men are talking about Black women or women, and just completely negating their brain and only talking about their body. Everything is physical. Everything is about her booty, and she can do the splits while twerking, and she's a bad bitch, and she's all these things. And like, yeah, it's fun and it's jamming for, you know, someone of my age who's already gone through the teenage years and has grown up and is a strong woman. But what about these young impressionable girls who don't have a strong father figure in their lives or a male figure in their lives to teach them their value? And that sucks that we have to get it from a man. But right now we're in a society where most of the women get their value from the way they're treated by men in their lives. until we get to a point where that's no longer needed. We need the men to be better, and they're just not. So we as women need to figure that out and be able to teach each other our value. And also sometimes there's no middle ground. You know, you're either a churchgoer and super pious, or you're not. You know, there's no in between. It's very polarizing. We should be able to be sexual beings and creative beings and loving beings in the world without having it being confined by rules that are supposed to keep us safe, because those rules don't even keep us safe most of the time. You know, if you go to church and you're a good person, that you will either not have that kind of abuse in your life, or if that abuse happens to you, it's what's meant to be, or it's like that's your burden to bear through life. You know, maybe if you hadn't put yourself in that situation, that wouldn't have happened to you. It's like, no, we need to build something within the community, a sense of self and a sense of pride and a sense of value. It's so important. It's so important to have value. I mean, I'm somebody who suffers from depression, as you guys know, and a lot of the things that I feel most of the time is worthlessness. Honestly, and worthlessness, when you feel worthless, that can lead to so much negativity and negative stuff that you do in your life. I don't know how to fix it. I do think that there are women out there who are doing things. There's Jules doing Smart Brown Girls. There's, you know, Oprah doing her thing in Africa and in the States. There's Michelle Obama, who is changing things just by being the first lady. There are people who are doing things to affect change and to get women to love themselves, Black women to love themselves and see themselves as valued beings. But really it starts in the home. And so it just has to do with you and how you rear your kids and where you are mentally when you have your kids, and how you teach them how to be in this world. I'm not a parent, but when I do become a parent, that's going to be my number one thing, is to teach my girls and my boys how to love themselves and be in the world and be content. There's going to be so much outside influence that's going to tell them they're not good enough, but I'm going to be the one thing that's going to support them and nurture them and tell them that they are. Okay. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. You have a fantastic day. Bye.